In this video, I'll give you an overview of Warcry, and I'll talk about what you need to get started. I'll also talk a little about the rumours of an upcoming edition and why that shouldn't stop you getting into this fantastic game straight away. Warcry is Game Workshop's skirmish game in the fantasy Age of Sigmar setting. Rather than just being a small version of the larger war game, this is a completely new rule set. At the core of the game is a really simple set of mechanics. This is an alternating activations game, so each player activates one fighter and then the other player gets to do the same. Each fighter can only be activated once per turn, and each activation gives them 2 actions, so they can do stuff like move, disengage, wait, attack. In a single action, a fighter can move up to their move value. If they're in melee with an enemy, they can't move normally, instead have the option to disengage, moving only 3 inches out of melee. The wait action ends the fighter's activation without doing anything, but allows them to take the remaining second action later. This can be useful when you're trying to time an activation, like when you want to take the last action of the turn, or you're waiting for an enemy fighter to move first. Attacks are performed by rolling a number of dice based on the weapon, then counting hits and crits. Whether a die hits depends on the strength of the attacker and the toughness of the defender. If the attacker is stronger, you need a 3+, if they're equal, a 4+, and if the defender is tougher, a 5+. Crits are where you roll a 6. Each hit will do damage equal to the weapon's hit value, which is the first number, and each crit will do damage equal to the weapon's crit value, which is the second damage number. And that essentially is the core of the game. Next we have some abilities. At the start of each turn during the hero phase, you roll 6 dice. You group the dice together into sets with the same value, so you should have a number of singles, doubles, triples, or quads. Each turn you also get a wild dice. You can either bank that for later use, or you can upgrade one of your singles to a double, one of your doubles to a triple, or triples to a quad. These groups of dice are then used to power special abilities, either on the universal abilities list that everyone can use, or on the Warbands special abilities list that are unique to the Warband. You can use one ability and only one ability when you activate a fighter. Although singles aren't used to power special abilities, the player with the most singles gets to go first, so there is some advantage in it. And then that's it. You now know everything you need to know about the game to actually sit down and play. For the remainder of this video, I'm going to talk about getting started with a matched play game. At this point, it's also worth noting that Games Workshop have started talking about a new setting for Warcry, the Gnarlwood. We think this will mean a new set of warbands and scenery, which is awesome. The Warcry logo has changed a bit though, which leads some to believe a new edition might be on the way. For a new player getting started, this can be a bit of a worry, but not to fear. Even if you buy everything available right now, very little would get replaced in a new edition. Models, terrain, dice, and tokens are all going to be fine. Some content in the books could get replaced, but it's unlikely we're going to see a massive overhaul of the rules, considering they've been so successful. Indeed, the books mostly contain options, stuff like unique scenarios and special campaigns, which will still be fine to play in a new edition. Alright, let's have a look and see what you need to get started. So, rules, terrain, miniatures, dice, and tokens. If you don't have anything, then one of the core boxes is a great starting point. It'll have all those dice, tokens, cards, rules, etc. It'll also have some amazing looking scenery and 2 warbands. If the warbands and the terrain are to your taste, then this is a great deal. If you're not interested in warbands, then the value drops. But you can sell the warbands off, or see if you can get the set secondhand without the models. Currently, the Warcry core set is Red Harvest. The previous versions were Catacombs, and then the original starter set. Red Harvest doesn't have the core rulebook, but the included book does have the core rules you need to play. The box is a fantastic game all within itself, and it's hugely recommended, as it provides a big saving compared to buying the miniatures and scenery separately. If the aesthetic doesn't appeal, but you still want to get a core box, wait a bit, and I'm sure the Gnarlwood box will be of similar value. What if you already have the models though, or you just like a certain faction and want to get those rather than the ones in the core box? The core rulebook does give you all the basics for how to play the game. For your fighter rules though, you're going to need to pick up the relevant faction book. So there's one for Order, one for Chaos, one for Death, and one for Destruction. At that stage you will have all of the rules you need. Now, there are some points adjustments that appear in the Tome of Champions 2021, but the Warcry list builder Varenscribe on the Warhammer community website already has the new points, so you don't need to pick it up just for that. That said, It is an excellent next step and has the rules for the Underworld Warbands, which add a lot of variety, as well as this year's matched play scenarios. For terrain, you have the option of buying the kit separately. Alternatively, you can just work with the terrain you have. The terrain setups from the books can be used as guides, replacing the terrain in the images with terrain that you have. Hopefully you already have lots of tokens and dice. The only dice you're going to need are d6s. For the tokens, the main tokens you need are ones to show the model's been activated, tokens to show that the model has taken a wait action, and counters to indicate the number of wounds taken. Alright, scenery, tokens, dice, miniatures, and rules. So let's put it all together. There are over 40 different factions in this game, and lots of options within each faction. You don't want one super strong warband and another weak one. So here are some considerations when putting your two warbands together. First, speed kills. Games are won on victory conditions, and fast fighters are able to get to objectives and apply their force where it's needed. In this game, a move of 4 inches is considered slow, and 3-inch move units rarely get into the action at all. Second, cheap is good. More fighters give you more activations, letting you get more work done. They can cover the board, tie down expensive units, and cap objectives. Third, dragons are scary. If you have a powerful unit that can move fast, especially if it can fly, it's a dragon. Being able to move fast lets you apply the damage where it needs to go. So keep those things in mind. Speed, swarm, and dragons. Obviously, you can't have a swarm list of really fast dragons, but having 1 or 2 dragons, lots of fast units, and then some cheap chaff to keep the board will create a really strong team. The goal here isn't to build a super competitive list, but this should give you some red flags over why one warband might be better than the other. Warbands get split into 3 different groups: the shield, the hammer, and the dagger. This is something done when you put the list together, so it's good to get it out of the way now. For your first game, it can seem very abstract, but it's all about deployment. If you want to fine-tune it, look at all the possible match play deployments. So if you're playing from the core book, there's 12, and if you're playing from the Tomb of Champions 2021, there's 6. If you have the option, definitely go with the Tomb of Champions version, as the scenarios are a little better balanced and have 4 turns instead of 3, which is a little bit more fun. In the majority of these games, the shield will start in play, so you want that to be your best group. The hammer and dagger will have less models each, but leaving either weak leaves them vulnerable, and there are missions in the core book where objective is to kill the enemy hammer or dagger. So try aim for 40 to 50% of your units in your shield, and the remainder split between the other 2. There is still a ton to talk about with this game, and I haven't really gotten into the different factions, the campaign system, or the fun options like monster battles and the co-op Vermintide campaign. So all that will have to wait for another video. For a last tip, allow me to recommend the online fan-made card builders. The game does come with fighter cards, but there aren't enough cards for everything. At the start, packs of cards are released for each of the factions, but with the faction books, there are now way more fighters than there ever were cards released. So if we want cards to bling out the game and make reference easier, we gotta make them ourselves. Search online for Warcry card generator, and you'll find some fan-made versions which are fantastic. You can take the details from the books and make a special ability card from your warband, along with a card for each fighter, even going as far as adding pictures of your own models onto the cards. Alright, that's all I have for now. Check out the Salty Sea on YouTube for videos about the game, and ageofminiatures.com for articles about it. If you want to peek at some of the fighters out there, look for the Warcry Compendium, which is a fan-compiled list of all the fighters available.